Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. Oh, hey, friend. We're back with the Creative Disruptors series. And I always forget to add, or maybe I just forgot with the last one that I recorded. So I'm saying that for dramatic effect. I'm not an expert in any one of these artists. Some of them I'm a really big fan of, but out of respect for you, trying not to talk for endless amounts of time or share way too many fucking side quest stories. So I'm not presenting any of these like I have done the thorough amount of research it would take to give any one of these artists justice. I am also beginning to incorporate listener suggestions, and this episode is one of them. This actually came from a friend of mine who is originally from England, was super deep into the hip hop scene. He helped me really dive deep into the jungle and grime scenes that I had, prior to knowing him, not been familiar with. He mentioned this artist to me when I had seen them around. And I think this artist is really interesting because they have millions and millions of hardcore, devoted followers. And yet so many people would have no idea who they were. And I think it's so fascinating now that you can be a completely self-sustained, independent artist with the types of like metrics this kid has on the internet. And still people don't know who you are, you know. In my day, if you were doing numbers like this artist is doing and hitting the chart like this artist is hitting, everybody would know who you were. So I think they are well deserving of being in this particular series of Creative Disruptor. And I'd be really curious to know if you'd heard of them prior. And not dissimilar to Chapel, when I made their playlist, it's like all of the songs they've recorded and released because they're young. This particular artist has had some really unique challenges, which I also think, I mean, no one could ever compare to Nina, don't get me wrong, but Nina's particular context in which she created and trailblazed, and she didn't just disrupt, she blew up culture and music and performance and feminism and all of these different constructs. This particular artist is dealing with some very, very well-known themes and challenges. I think a lot of my listeners, you can relate to as well. And not just in terms of your own creative struggles or potentially obstacles or gatekeepers or accessibility challenges you might be experiencing, but sort of more figuratively, like how do you continue to create when you feel like it's absolutely impossible to make art in this moment, in your body, in this world? So you might be in a pause moment, in a space where you're feeling blocked. Like I said, your art is inaccessible. The world is an inhabitable place to create within. And that pause might feel permanent. Ren Gill can absolutely relate. In his early 20s, his illness erased almost everything he'd ever done, including his own physical well-being and body and ability to create. Yet in that, what he perceived as being a permanent pause in his forced silence, what he created was himself. And so I think what we're going to talk mainly about today is turning breakdown into breakthrough. And we all, well, any of you who've been listening for a moment have known that there's been some repetitive breakdowns for me. I laugh because that's what I do in horrible spaces. And it 100% results in the breakthrough when you can believe it will, when you can make believe, as I had talked a lot about in the last episode, until it's real. Before the millions of streams, before the viral spoken words, before cracking audience members and hardcore fans open, before the charts and the accolades and the comeback stories, There was just a kid named Ren who grew up in the seaside town of Port Talbot, Wales. I don't know how actual big Wales is, but I would imagine it is one of the smallest. And it doesn't qualify as its own country, but it does forgive me, all of the Welsh people who I know aren't listening to this, so it's okay. But like, woo, talk about coming from the middle of nowhere. This town is known for its steelworks, more for its steelworks than it is for its sound. Ren was a skateboarder. He was a graffiti kid, a graph artist. He was a freestyler, as in hip hop. He was restless. He was curious. He was relentlessly expressive. By 16, he was performing in underground rap ciphers. He was playing guitar in local punk bands. His first band, The Big Push, performed in the bigger seaside port of Brighton. It blended hip-hop, rock, and reggae. He busked. He played street corners because he had nowhere else to play. He built crowds by capturing people's attention on the street. I kind of mentioned this in the last episode about how comedians like work on their bits, but nothing will teach you how to perform like standing on the street and trying to get someone to stop. As his artistry was evolving, his body was breaking down. Years of misdiagnosed chronic illness left Ren bedbound, undiagnosed, and deeply depressed. He's quoted as saying, "I lost a decade of my life to the sickness, but I found who I was in the stillness." Mind you, a decade of his life was more than half of his life at this point. That's where this story begins, with a creator who didn't just survive his silence, he transformed himself within it. So today we're going to ask, what would Ren do? And what would Ren do if he were building business? So at 23, he was finally diagnosed with Lyme disease and chronic illness. And his entire world stopped in trying to treat what they had now finally identified. He couldn't tour, he couldn't perform, he couldn't collaborate, he couldn't predict a day ahead. He felt trapped inside his own body, and the world didn't pause for pain. Despite the very grassroots, very organic, very ground level amount of success he had created, and that momentum that fuels so many emerging artists grinding to a complete halt, he did release Freckled Angels in 2016. Self-recorded, self-funded, written from trauma, tearing him apart. It debuted on BBC Radio. It did chart independently, and it kickstarted his career, not from the hype, but from his own die-hard, no pun intended, approach to creativity. He didn't wait for funding, for a label, for support. He wrote what he had to write. He reclaimed his own narrative. What would Ren do? He would make the art he needed to survive. When the crisis hits, its mutation can be your material. So choose one email, one conversation, one image or video or anything creative you do today, and have it answer the moment you are in. Have it solve a problem today. Make it raw, make it real, but put it out there. Give it a go. That's what Ren would do. And this is why my friend, I'll share his website with you. He has become an expert in nervous system regulation, and he lives in Japan. I should have gotten permission before telling the story because he listens to the podcast. You know who you are. I love you. Hi. And was just so impressed with the lyrics and what Ren, the storytelling that Ren participates in, let alone the impact that he was making. But as a survivor of some pretty traumatic events, think tsunami, catastrophic earthquake. Japan is volatile at best when it comes to its physical and geographic challenges. And surviving those can be an experience you mentally and emotionally get through, but your physical body can hold on to some of the intense trauma that you experience. And on the other side of that, my friend recognizes what Ren has been through and what he's essentially teaching us we're all capable of, despite the pain we might be enduring in the moment. Ren released Freckled Angels, and then after that, Sick Boy, through the Other Songs Records, an independent artist-first label he co-founded. Are you noticing a trend here, by the way, in terms of what every single one of these disruptors had to do in order to get their art out? And also that the common thread of sticking to their guns, right? Like values first, ethics driven, principled, to the point of being told they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. And also that then becomes the reason they're successful. I digress. Ren refused major labels because at this point he had a big enough audience. They wanted a piece. He chose to set his pricing low. And he was actually wildly strategic about this because Ren, unlike the Beastie Boys, unlike Nina, unlike Bowie, he got data in real time because he was running his entire machine himself online. He could see the stats. He could literally time price setting, distribution, conversations with his people because he could see when they were tuning in. He created these bundles. He gamed the system in a way the system had never seen anyone coming. He charted #1 on the UK album charts in 2023, surpassing mainstream acts because of fan loyalty, not bribing radio stations or DJs, not co-branding or collaborating with pop anything. Like he got super creative and very strategic because he had the space to do it because he had been bedbound. Sick Boy's digital pricing began at bargain tiers, and that fueled his sales that allowed him to place #1 on the charts. He bundled merch knowing that there was a certain amount of purchasing power that he could leverage with his fans. Again, that almost replaced actual digital music sales. This like being like a 1-2 punch for getting him on the charts. And he charted knowing that that would enable him to get more attention from people who were unfamiliar with who he was, which would then allow his art to be more impactful and help heal more people. And he continues to create impact and profound positivity in his circles. And we'll get into that in a second. But he didn't chase streams. He cultivated community. When he debuted at #2 on the midweek UK charts, he was able to diagnose the gap. And that's why he then looked at his pricing and he discounted his music on his own website during the final tracking window. So that low price added like 4,500 and change in sales, which was enough to push it to #1. And the whole reason the charts exist is to sell music, right? This wasn't a streaming victory. It was an intuitive hit that moved real units. People bought his music. They didn't listen to it for free or whatever they pay to access their streaming music. They went out and bought his single. Still a digital product. Ren used the merch bundles, the vinyl, the tee, the figurine to convert fans into buyers that counted towards this physical album. And that's how he got onto the charts. I mean, and he's able to do that in the moment, pivot, noticing another theme here, because he controlled it all. It also gave all of his fans literal physical ownership, again, literal, over his success. It became their shared success. And if you've ever had one of your like indie darlings kick out one of those Pop Tarts, it feels pretty good. This is a textbook example of using creative solutions to your advantage. You can disrupt the system. You can use their rules and their game board and their playing pieces against them. And it's not about like a win, lose, right, wrong, better or worse. Everybody wins. And this is where I'm a big believer in like learn the rules before you can break them. I thought it was really fascinating when I started to kind of do this deep dive. By owning your own infrastructure, by knowing what you do best, like not all artists think like this. So this isn't going to be a tactical takeaway that you can apply because your brain might not be this level of strategy. But I think when you take a big enough step back, what all of these disruptors have proven is own your systems, whatever it is that will support you in the way that you work. That is your do-it-yourself distribution route and infrastructure and system that will make you successful. Control means having the courage to do it your way, owning your own way of doing business. So here are a couple of different ways you could probably play with this. This moment-based pricing, this isn't playing off urgency or scarcity, which is just such an old school manipulative marketing tactic. And yet it would probably activate the same parts of our brain that recognize there is a timeliness and an opportunistic, playful way of making things accessible. So by identifying like one asset, a product, a piece, a program, something that you're offering, and playing with the price of it temporarily just to see, where does this fit? How does this inspire? Do people like this? Does this make it more in demand? You're almost playing with that supply and demand obviousness out of economics, but make it moment-based pricing, not a sale, not a time limitation, but something you're testing out with your audience and letting them know, hey, we're going to try this. We're going to see if this works together. This idea of bundling, again, it's not a sale. It's not from scarcity. It's not from urgency, but like ways of sort of moving different types of your assets together. This kind of makes it easier for people. It almost feels like a bonus or a reward. That to me is an expansive way of creating accessibility for everything that you're putting out there. And I think Ren might think of it almost like a community first release. So we have moment-based pricing, we have bundling, and now we have this community first releases. So activating your audience through direct connection with them, direct conversation with them, and giving them the opportunity to access these assets before everybody else, to access assets that everybody else doesn't get to. I just bought tickets to a concert that an artist had released a code for on like their website. You kind of had to do a bit of a deep dive to get there, but it made the concert a tenth of what the actual pricing is going to be. And this is at a major venue. And I'm telling people what I paid for the tickets. They're like, I haven't seen a gig priced like that at that venue since the 90s. That's what I'm talking about, right? Like I might not even be able to make it to that gig, but I'm happy to have been able to buy that ticket because I supported the artist directly on their website. And I feel like I was a part of something really special. Ren's approach proves that success isn't about trends. It's about understanding how the game is scored and then using savvy strategies, playing with your creativity and what you want to put out so that it elevates the authenticity of your work and it becomes an award-winning achievement for everybody involved. Again, making art and selling art are two completely different activities, but it can still be very creative to sell. If you watch Ren's videos, you will understand why this artist is incomparable and why they're in this particular series, especially if you've never heard of them. Hi Ren is the one that really grabbed me. It's cinematic. It is very raw. It is confessional. It was filmed on a shoestring budget and it skyrocketed Ren's notoriety in terms of critics and change makers and chronic disease communities. It hit almost 7 million views. It's won several awards. And despite the fact that it was an incredibly budget production, it feels elegant. He's quoted as saying, "I wanted to show people what being me looked like, because until you show it, it doesn't exist." And that vulnerability is one of the flagship details of Ren. Like, you really feel like you get to be a part of his experience, even though his experience is really unpredictable and really challenging. So you'll hear a lot of people talk about like agitate the pain or be authentic and vulnerable, but it's truly just being your emotional self, telling the truth, being willing to be all of yourself at all times. And you don't have to do that on camera per se. You can storyboard a visual. You can shoot it your way. You can release it when you don't feel as vulnerable as exposed. But you can let your audience decide how relatable you can be together. Ren didn't write songs as his end game. Songs were part of his creative suite. He started doing, he called them live, laugh, cry events. So much of his development happened on YouTube. And, you know, YouTube allows you to do these like live interactive broadcasts, if you will, streams, but it's only the creator that is interfacing with the screen. Everybody else is chatting. And this does give everybody a degree of, I think, like anonymity. But it gives the creator a little bit more control and also like absolute and total real-time engagement. He is known for making videos and albums at the events that he is participating in. He co-produced Asylum at Secret Garden Party. He made art and mental health two sides of the same token. He raised a lot of money for RNLI, turning his platform into an activist's space. And he's very open, and this is kind of the point I was trying to get to. He uses his art as his own cathartic therapy. And now he's leveraging that because it has been so powerful and relatable. And his emotional vulnerability truly connected with people who may not have actually been into his music, but they can relate to his chronic disease journey and experience. Now he's using his art as a template for art therapy in public service. So as you start to step out your own releases, again, whatever those might look like for your business and for your art, they can simply be experiences, which makes them very like temporal. And I think we talked about this with the Beastie Boys. Like, it can just be a moment. Nothing you create needs to be forever. And you can test that with your fans, with your supporters. And they might not even like it. That doesn't have to mean you do it again or don't do it again. I think what Ren would do is ask, how can this moment give back? Not just create content. So, little side quest here, but when you think about like the project you need, that cathartic therapy your work could offer you, what would you create? One step further, how would you put it out there? How could you make that a part of this sort of therapeutic experience? Would you be willing to share something so raw? It's not just about the pain you've experienced, but it would be painful to share it. Would you be willing to do that if it healed someone? We've just sort of mapped out a release and distribution strategy, very loosely, very big picture. Then the question becomes, if you play that all the way through, from what's the project you need to the courage to put it out, you've now created a moment. How would you frame that? There's a playlist. We did get to 25 songs. Like I said, I think it's his entire body of work. And I shouldn't laugh because it is incredibly powerful. I'll be really curious to hear what you think of this music. Ren's path wasn't chosen. He built it from his broken bones and proved that a breakdown can be a brand, that illness can be ingenuity, that emotional availability can be enterprise. So next time you feel canceled by life, you feel like you are in the breakdown, things have paused to a point of whisper, of absolute stillness. Maybe you might ask, what would Ren do? He would know that the breakthrough is on the other side. He would rewrite the script. He would rebuild the stage. He would produce an entirely immersive experience focused on healing, on sharing that healing journey, and being open enough to hit play to show you what it could look like, and then courageously ask for your applause. Really interesting watching these, what I perceive as being really young creators, just breaking every rule by following the rules. It's incredibly paradoxical. I'm just so impressed by how people are making art and putting art out there and what they're sharing in their art and how they're healing all of us in that journey. So again, I'd really love to know what you think of Ren. Thank you so much for being here. I think next episode, we'll get back to some of our oldies but goodies. And I'm having a lot of fun. Thank you. Love you.